In a previous video, I asked you guys between two films which was a better fit for a review. I had an overwhelming response telling me to go with Space Jam, so I guess I'm talking about Space Jam. But first, one must embrace the time the film was made. One must slam before they jam. So I got my short sleeves on top of my long sleeves on top of my short sleeves. It's time to complete the 90s wardrobe with the most important aspect, the extreme baseball cap. Every kid in the 90s had an extreme way of wearing their hat. However, you gotta get it right. It's a science. Wikipedia, look it up. So, you don't just simply wear a baseball cap if you wanna complete the complete visage. You put on the hat, and every place you dial it corresponds to a different year. Watch. One more. Let's do this! Prior to this movie, corporate synergy is nothing new. We saw sports icons mingle with cartoon characters and pop culture for decades. However, it was in the early 90s when Nike was promoting the Air Jordans and decided to take basketball's hottest icon, along with animation's biggest troll, and pair them together in hybrid animated commercials. After the success of the commercials, Jordan approached the director about expanding the commercials into feature-length cross-promotional films.
Come on, Michael, it's game time. Get your Hanes on, lace up your Nikes, grab your Wheaties and your Gatorade, and we'll pick up a Big Mac on the way to the ballpark.
Oh yeah, I'm not kidding about this movie being a glorified commercial. Because there are plenty of lines that hinder on promoting products and blatant placement. There's a scene in the film that goes on for 5 minutes. That's only goal is to have Bugs and Daffy grab Michael's Air Jordans. It serves little purpose other than showing what the cartoon characters look like in the real world. So I know there really isn't anything else to prove about this movie's willingness to try to sell you stuff, but you got this line from one of the aliens.
Cool shoes.
Nail, meet coffin. Slam. Now that we really know what this movie's all about, what is it really? A mix between really good animation and music, a terribly illogical script, and a strange premise. So let's talk about the good qualities about this movie, because let's face it, you're gonna need to cover them before we get to the bad. The animation is pretty good. I remember mentioning in my Looney Tunes Back in Action review how my mom mistaken the picture book for the Art of Space Jam book. Because that's an easy mistake to make, right? I held on to this thing that described the character animation model sheets, layout design, and color schemes. In fact, it's one of the first books I got that sparked my own desire towards animation. So, thanks, Space Jam. You can even argue, as terrible as Michael Jordan is, as an actor, just reading his lines so he can get his check and practice in his Jordan Dome, which I'll bring up later. He's acting around characters who aren't even there. As far as most of those interactions go, he does a pretty good job responding to green screens and tennis balls. When you see it on the screen, it really shows in the rendering. The interaction with live-action actors is good, but has already been perfected by Roger Rabbit. However, the movie really renders the Looney Tunes to seem three-dimensional, almost as if they're indicating a possibility that they would transform the characters into CG 3D models. Which I could say is a godsend because most of the CG is outdated and awkwardly disjointed. Let's talk about the music. Tell me if you've heard this song.
I believe I can.
Yeah, so every song you've heard from every bar mitzvah and communion from the late 90s and early 2000s most likely came from this soundtrack. It should really come to no surprise that the corporate merchandise film would want to boast a good soundtrack. It ended up doing pretty well selling its albums. You could even say it started something. Remember right around this film came out, we had more animated films go from original musicals to films with background songs to promote artists. Remember Tarzan's original score? I'm sure you could have just changed the soundtrack name to Phil Collins' Jungle Fever, and nobody would know the difference. So now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the story. Space Jam is a coming-of-age story where a retired superstar wants to try a new sport, help his son find acceptance as a baseball player, and eventually go on a wacky adventure with the Looney Tunes playing radical aliens who took the bodacious talents of the best NBA players of '96. Except for Shaq, who I guess was too busy granting wishes from his boombox. With all that said and done, Space Jam, a movie where the Looney Tunes play a basketball game with aliens, wants to take a somewhat biographical approach on talking about Michael Jordan, or serving as a PR stunt to rub his ego and convince the world how great he is. I don't know. Most reports say that Jordan acted like a total diva on set, and the director had to cater to his every whim. It seemed weird when we see his agent Stan, played by Wayne Knight, trying to please Michael as much as he can, which apparently isn't too far from the truth. He apparently had his own personal basketball court called the Jordan Dome, where he could train every day when shooting this film.
Joining Michael were a number of other NBA stars, and of course, on the set of every film, you always find some extras.
So Michael Jordan's story, as well as the NBA players, is so disjointed within the overall film that it's actually hilarious. So the movie starts with a cliched moment where he's growing up. You roll the credits, and in a press conference where he announces his retirement. And then we go to outer space to meet the villains. Okay. Back to Jordan playing baseball and everybody kissing his butt. Followed by the aliens going to Looney Tune Land who want to steal the Looney Tunes, which is apparently under the earth and everybody's totally fine with. Right? Even when Jordan is brought to the Looney Tunes world and they're playing the big game, guess who they hire as a sub? Bill Murray. Oh yeah, perfectly reasonable, except maybe a few things. How come the aliens need the Looney Tunes as an attraction to their theme park when they can hire actors? If the aliens need to have their own Looney Tune attractions, why not take their Looney Tune abilities like they did for the NBA players? In fact, why not just take the NBA players back to the theme park and have a Harlem Globetrotters type of attraction? If the Looney Tunes are a part of our world and nobody seems weirded out with seeing cartoon characters, how come they don't call the cops, or the military, or special forces, that aliens are trying to kidnap them? Why do the Looney Tunes freak out about playing basketball after the aliens have their powers of the NBA? Can't they just do Looney Tunes stuff and win the games like most of their cartoons? But most importantly, why? I get that Lola Bunny will eventually become a better character in later Looney Tune projects, but her only characteristics are that she's a girl bunny and that she can play basketball. Which is pretty upsetting when you have her with the Looney Tunes, a hotbed of comedic personalities. Speaking of which, is it me or are the Looney Tunes just not acting like the Looney Tunes? Sure, near the end of the film they do the cartoon gags we know and love them for, but for the most part they really suck at their job. Take Bugs for example. He's the king of manipulation and deceit. He manages to get bamboozled dozens of times in this film. Say what you will about Looney Tunes back in action, but at least the film tried to have the Looney Tunes stay in character. So now let's get to the big overall question. If this movie sucks, then why do people want to see a sequel 20 years after the original? Truth be told, with all its mixed reviews, Space Jam is the highest grossing basketball movie, compared to White Men Can't Jump, Coach Carter, and even Hoosiers. But after revisiting the film, my theory is that the cult status comes from nostalgia. This movie is as much of a 90s time capsule as a Goofy movie. It's what a generation of kids who grew up in this decade want to revisit the things they love about their childhood. Michael Jordan, the 96 NBA star lineup, the Looney Tunes, the hip-hop and R&B. We live in a generation that's running short of 80s properties to adapt, so the next logical step is go to the next decade and see what they can bring back. So as dumb, illogical, painfully commercial, and disgraceful to the Looney Tunes legacy, so much so that legendary animator Chuck Jones hated this film before his death, it had some charm when talking about this lost, crazy generation known as the 90s. So, not quite a forget about it, and definitely not worth it. Just go in with low expectations for a middle-of-the-road okay rating.
Yeah, I guess it's okay to admit that nostalgia kind of blinds me, but Fly Like an Eagle, man, good song.
So with the news of a Space Jam 2 coming out, I want to know in the comments section below what thing from the 90s you want to have make a comeback. It could be a TV series, it could be another movie. Comment and let me know. I'm Joey.T.Cartoon.P and thanks for watching this radical review on the Cartoon Palooza that I probably won't be doing in this sort of style until a Goofy movie maybe? Let me know.